Beyond the Gates spoilers tease that Dani begins to spiral. In the wake of her divorce from Bill, her life, once anchored in certainty and control, starts to unravel thread by thread. The very air of Fairmont Crest becomes stifling, reminding her of everything she has lost. Each whispered conversation, each glance at the supermarket, each invitation she doesn't receive, chips away at her already fragile composure. She doesn't just feel discarded, she feels erased. In one raw, unfiltered moment, Dani stands before her bathroom mirror, the pale morning light casting long shadows on her face. She gazes into her own eyes, not recognizing the woman looking back. Where once there was confidence, now there's grief. Where once there was structure, now there's chaos. And threaded through it all, the ghost of Bill. The man who had made her feel safe, grounded, visible. He hadn't just left her, had taken the scaffolding of her identity with him. Now she is left to sort through the wreckage, and her bitterness toward herself deepens. She questions everything, her choices, her strength, her sense of reality. Why didn't she see the signs earlier? Why did she believe that love was enough? Meanwhile, Hayley finds herself at the epicenter of a storm she never truly anticipated. Whispers swirl through the Fairmont Crest community, sharp, judging, and relentless. Rumors about a fake pregnancy, about manipulation, about her being the catalyst of Dani and Bill's collapse. The more she tries to defend herself, the guiltier she appears. Her confidence, always fragile beneath the gloss, begins to disintegrate. It all comes to a head at the largest social event of the season, a spring charity gala hosted on the manicured lawns of the Crestwood estate. Hayley, dressed in a flowing lavender gown, forces a smile as she makes her rounds, the weight of every glance sinking deeper into her skin. But when she sees the floral arrangement on the main banquet table, white lilies, baby's breath, and roses, the very combination she had once picked for her wedding vision board with Bill, something inside her breaks. Her breath shortens. Her fingers tremble. And then, without warning, she collapses. Guests rush to her side, but she waves them away, tears streaking down her cheeks. "I can't do this anymore," she says, voice shaking. "I don't want to be the villain in someone else's story." It isn't physical exhaustion that brought her down, it's emotional collapse, psychological implosion. She has spent months trying to hold together a narrative that no longer served her, and it finally caught up. The truth is, Hayley never wanted to destroy anyone. She just wanted to belong. To be loved. To be chosen. Bill, meanwhile, begins to feel the weight of the chaos he has caused. At first, he tried to rationalize everything: his failed marriage with Dani, his new attachment to Hayley, the misunderstandings and accusations. But denial can only last so long. Watching Dani break down from afar and Hayley implode under the weight of public scrutiny, Bill is finally forced to reckon with a hard truth: he has broken more than promises. He has fractured two women's lives. His guilt doesn't arrive all at once. It builds gradually, invading his thoughts, keeping him up at night. He replays every conversation with Dani in the weeks leading up to their divorce. He recalls the way Hayley's hands trembled when she confessed she might be pregnant. The gravity of it all begins to sink in. He's not just the man in the middle of a scandal. He's the source of it. Determined to do something, anything that feels honest, Bill organizes a meeting. Not just a meeting, but a public confrontation. A forum of accountability. He rents out the grand ballroom at the Fairmont Crest Country Club and sends personal invitations to Dani and Hayley. No press. No audience. Just the three of them, and the ghosts they each carry. The room is cavernous, almost intimidating, with vaulted ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows that let in the harsh afternoon sun. A single round table is placed at the center, surrounded by 3 chairs. The decor is minimalist, almost therapeutic, pale blues and soft grays, carefully chosen to disarm. It feels more like a mediation room than a confrontation zone. Dani arrives first, dressed in navy, sharp-eyed but silent. Hayley enters moments later, her expression unreadable. Bill stands as they arrive, then sits, uncharacteristically nervous. He begins by admitting fault. No grand gestures. No speeches. Just truth. I was selfish, he says. I thought I could make everything work by keeping it all separate. But I ended up tearing all of us apart. Dani listens, arms crossed, brow furrowed. Hayley stares at the table, avoiding eye contact. It's clear neither of them is ready to forgive. But the fact that they're there at all is a start. The conversation flows in starts and stops, interspersed with silence that says more than words ever could. Dani speaks first. I spent years trying to be the perfect wife, she says. I made excuses for your distance, for your silence. I kept telling myself you were just tired or stressed. But you were already leaving. You just didn't have the courage to tell me. Hayley's voice, when it comes, is soft. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I didn't plan to fall for someone who wasn't mine to begin with. I thought if I could just prove I was worthy, maybe everything else would work itself out. The tension between them shifts. It's no longer antagonistic, just sad. Heavy. Worn. In a moment of unexpected honesty, Dani turns to Hayley. You know what's funny? For the longest time, I thought you wanted my life. But maybe we were both just trying to survive in different ways. Hayley nods, her eyes glistening. I didn't want your life. I wanted a place to belong. Bill watches them, silent. For once, he doesn't try to insert himself. He just listens. Absorbs. Reflects. They don't resolve everything in that room. No one hugs. No one walks away with a clean slate. But something shifts. A quiet understanding takes root. They see each other differently now, not as enemies, but as casualties of a shared delusion. Each of them had built their identity around the idea of love, and when that idea collapsed, they were left to pick through the rubble. The days that follow are marked by silence. Not avoidance, but reflection. Hayley disappears from public view for a while. Rumors swirl again, this time about rehab, about a retreat in the mountains, about her seeking professional help. Whatever the truth is, she's no longer trying to control the narrative. She's just trying to breathe. Dani begins journaling, something she hasn't done since college. She writes letters she never sends. To Bill. To herself. To the girl she used to be. She meets weekly with a therapist and starts attending a women's support group under a pseudonym. No one knows who she is there, and that anonymity becomes her sanctuary. Bill, too, begins his own version of penance. He doesn't chase either woman. He doesn't make grand overtures. Instead, he focuses on rebuilding the relationships he'd neglected, with his daughter, with his aging mother, with the friends he pushed aside in his pursuit of perfection. It's not redemption. It's restoration, one honest step at a time. But the shadow of the past doesn't vanish. It lingers in small moments, in the way Dani hesitates before trusting someone new, in the way Hayley flinches when someone calls her name too loudly, in the way Bill can't quite meet his own eyes in the mirror yet. They're healing, but the scars remain. Each of them is learning, slowly, that healing isn't linear. It's messy, complicated, necessary. And somewhere, beneath the pain, a question begins to form. Not about what went wrong, but about what could come next. The late summer sun casts long shadows over Fairmont Crest as tension once again begins to stir beneath the calm surface. Though the confrontation at the country club offered a moment of clarity, it was far from a resolution. Dani finds herself oscillating between serenity and despair. Her nights are longer now, not due to regret, but because she's haunted by possibilities. What if she had walked away sooner? What if she had never tried to fix something that was already broken? Her therapy sessions revealed deeper wounds, ones that had little to do with Bill and everything to do with what she had sacrificed to keep a picture-perfect life intact. Her marriage hadn't ended in a moment. It had unraveled silently over years. The affair had only exposed a truth that had been buried too long. In one deeply intimate scene, Dani walks through her old home, now half-packed as she prepares to move. Every object carries weight. The wine glass chipped during their first Christmas, the framed photo from their honeymoon in Tulum, the dried lavender she kept by the window. She doesn't cry. She doesn't rage. She breathes. One step at a time, she lets go. But moving forward isn't as clean as packing boxes. At night, she dreams of Hayley not as a rival, but as a mirror. Someone who made the same mistakes, just in a different costume. Hayley, meanwhile, has taken her isolation seriously. After disappearing from the social scene, she checks herself into a holistic recovery center outside of town. Here, stripped of her makeup, expensive clothes, and curated social media posts, she confronts the hollow person she became in the wake of the scandal. Her days are quiet. Yoga at dawn. Group therapy at noon. Silent walks through the orchard at dusk. In one breakthrough session, she finally speaks without defensiveness. "I lied," she says. "I thought I had to. Because if people knew how empty I felt inside, they wouldn't choose me either." Her voice cracks, but there is no performance in her tears. For the first time, Hayley grieves. Not for Bill, not for the lost image, but for herself, for the version of her that always felt inadequate. Slowly, she builds new habits. She writes. She learns to cook. She sings badly at open mic nights hosted at the center. She begins to exist for herself, not for validation. Back in Fairmont Crest, whispers about her absence fade. Dani doesn't care anymore what people think. Bill is seen occasionally, usually alone. He has returned to work, but his demeanor is more subdued. He no longer holds court at board meetings. He listens more. When he visits his daughter, he brings books instead of gifts. He starts volunteering at a local youth center, a place far removed from the manicured walls of Fairmont Crest, but closer to something real. A turning point arrives when Bill receives a letter in Hayley's handwriting. It's not long or emotional. It reads, "I don't expect anything from you. But thank you for forcing me to look at myself. I didn't like what I saw. Now I do. I hope you get to like yourself too." He rereads it multiple times. It doesn't say she forgives him, and it doesn't ask for forgiveness either. It's an acknowledgement of growth. That alone makes him cry. Meanwhile, Dani begins attending a creative writing workshop under her maiden name. She writes short stories based on memories, but always fictionalized just enough to protect herself. In one, a woman lets go of her husband at the top of a mountain. In another, two women who once hated each other sit side by side on a bench, saying nothing, but knowing everything. Her writing becomes a way to process, to untangle truth from story. Unexpectedly, the town prepares for its centennial celebration. Fairmont Crest will host a massive event, bringing together current and former residents. Dani is asked to read an original piece to honor the legacy of the town. At first, she declines. Then she writes something so personal, she burns it. Then she writes again. When she steps on stage, she sees Bill in the back, quiet and still. She sees Hayley, returned at last, standing along the fence, hair pulled back, eyes locked on hers. Dani reads. Some stories don't end in triumph or tragedy. Some just change direction. We carry them anyway. Because they are ours. Because they matter. No one claps right away. Then a slow, soft ripple of applause grows until the entire lawn stands in ovation. But what matters more is the way Hayley nods once. A gesture not of approval, but recognition. Later that evening, the three of them find themselves on the edge of the party, far from the crowd. Dani sips sparkling water. Hayley bites into an apple from a local vendor. Bill stands between them, silent. "Strange to be here," Dani says, not looking at them. "Not really," Hayley replies. "We earned it." Bill smiles, not with arrogance, but peace. For once, no one needs to say anything profound. They are three people who have been burned, and somehow, chosen not to turn to ash. In the months that follow, Hayley opens a wellness blog, not to monetize her past, but to share what she learned. She avoids naming names, avoids scandal. Instead, she writes about boundaries, healing, and rebuilding. Dani publishes a collection of stories anonymously. One of them goes viral, sparking conversation about emotional survival and the myth of perfection. Bill keeps his head down. He becomes a mentor to young men dealing with family trauma. He speaks only once in public about what happened, in a closed-door support group. His voice shakes as he says, "I thought love was about being needed. Now I know it's about being known." The town changes too. Fairmont Crest, once obsessed with appearance, begins to make space for imperfection. The country club opens its doors to community programs. The local paper stops publishing gossip columns. Small shifts, but meaningful ones. On a rainy Sunday, Dani and Hayley run into each other at the market. They both reach for the same bunch of sunflowers. They laugh. It isn't forced. They let go at the same time. "Take them," Dani says. "Split them," Hayley answers. And so they do. Each walks away with half a bouquet. Neither looks back. Some wounds don't close completely. Some stories don't wrap up neatly. But for Dani, Hayley, and Bill, what matters now is that they are no longer defined by the worst parts of their story. They are authors of their next chapters, whatever they may be. And that, finally, is enough. Weeks pass. Life doesn't pause, but it softens. In quiet corners of Fairmont Crest, new rhythms emerge. Dani takes on a part-time teaching role at the local college, lecturing on narrative identity and storytelling. She tells her students that the stories we tell ourselves shape who we become, but the brave ones rewrite those stories when they no longer fit. One student, after class, asks her if she's ever had to rewrite a painful chapter. Dani just smiles. Hayley, meanwhile, is invited to speak at a women's retreat focused on recovery and reinvention. She hesitates at first, then agrees. She prepares for days, practicing in front of a mirror. But when the moment comes, she ditches the script. She stands under soft stage lighting and says, "I used to think survival meant being chosen by someone else. But now I know, survival is choosing yourself over and over again." The crowd is silent at first, then someone claps. Then more. When she steps off stage, her hands are shaking, but it feels like a release. She isn't running from shame anymore. She's owning her story. Bill, quieter than ever, becomes something of a fixture at the youth center. He teaches practical skill resume writing, financial literacy, conflict resolution. But more than that, he listens. He never talks about his past unless asked. When a teenager, angry and bitter, asks if he's ever hurt someone beyond repair, Bill nods. "Yeah," he says. "But that doesn't mean you stop trying to do better." That same teen eventually brings him a letter of apology written to his own mother. Change, Bill has learned, isn't always dramatic. It's often slow, unglamorous, and deeply human. One afternoon, all three are invited to a private screening of a local documentary project titled Unspoken. It features interviews with residents of Fairmont Crest discussing identity, failure, and resilience. None of them knew they'd appear in it. But there they are, in brief shots: Dani walking with a notebook, Hayley laughing with children at a volunteer event, Bill hammering nails at a community shelter build. They aren't interviewed. They're just seen. Afterward, they sit together in the dimly lit theater. No words are exchanged, just a shared breath of recognition. They may never be close, but they are no longer fractured. Something has settled. Months later, Dani publishes a memoir. It's not a tell-all, and she changes names. But the emotional truth is intact. She calls it Holding the Frame. It becomes a quiet bestseller, passed among book clubs and therapists. One chapter is dedicated to Hayley, though her name is never mentioned. It ends with the line, "Sometimes, the person you feared the most becomes the one who taught you to forgive yourself." Hayley reads it on a flight. She cries in seat 14A. She doesn't reach out, but she sends flowers. Bill writes a letter of his own. He never sends it. It's addressed to both of them. "You taught me what it means to be seen. I failed you, both of you, in different ways. But you didn't let that failure define you. You found your strength without me, and I am grateful for that. I hope, in some small way, I helped you get there, even if only by being the storm you learned to navigate." He keeps the letter in his desk drawer, a quiet monument to growth. By the time the next spring rolls around, Fairmont Crest is blooming again. The centennial celebration becomes an annual event. Dani returns as a guest speaker, this time smiling freely. Hayley brings homemade candles from her small business stall. Bill coordinates parking and logistics. They don't avoid each other. They simply exist in the same space, peacefully. And then, as the sun sets behind the trees, a local musician sings a soft, acoustic cover of a song that once played during a moment all three of them shared. Dani looks over. Hayley does too. Their eyes meet. They nod. Not everything needs to be spoken aloud. The story ends not with a bang, but with breath. A collective exhale. Not tied up with a bow, but open. Ready. They aren't who they were. They aren't enemies. They aren't victims. They are survivors. Authors. People who walked through fire and came out different, not burned, but tempered. And now, the gates aren't locked anymore. They're open. Wide enough for new stories to enter. And for old ones to rest.